Rest in peace, Sir Eldry. Hey everyone, Templar74 here with another video, and today's video is going to be my review on the latest episode of Sword Art Online, Alicization War of Underworld, Episode 8, Blood and Life. And I gotta be honest with you guys, this episode was a very dark episode. It was a very heavy episode, and it was a real tearjerker episode, really. I gotta be honest, especially when we got to these two death scenes here that really left an impact on me. But we'll talk about all of that soon enough. So, at risk of further rambling, let's move on to the actual episode. So the episode begins with an exhausted Alice who actually is coming back down from the sky on her dragon Amayori, and when Amayori actually lands to the ground, Alice falls off the back of her dragon completely exhausted, completely drained from that nuclear-style attack that she used last episode, and she actually ends up falling into Fanadio's arms, and when she does so, Fanadio congratulates her. However, Alice knows that there's not any time to waste, and she begins pleading with Fanadio, hey, all these lives that have just been depleted and all these spatial resources that have just been released, we need to reuse those by healing our soldiers before the Dark Territory army can reuse these spatial resources to launch another attack. Fanadio agrees and quickly orders the Human Guardian Army monks to start healing their wounded, and then turns over command of the frontline forces to Alice before reporting back to Broccoli, and it's also at this time that Eldry arrives. So we get a little bit of reunion here between Master and Apprentice, and Eldry, when we see him, is actually covered in blood, and when Alice sees this, she's like, you're not injured, are you? And Eldry says, no, I'm not majorly injured, but Eldry does admit that he feels like he should have died on the battlefield, and Alice is kind of puzzled by this, and she asks Eldry what's wrong, and Eldry basically admits that he failed because the goblins infiltrated his camp and started attacking, and it was actually Renly who ended up having to defeat the goblin chief that managed to break through his lines and injure his people in camp. Eldry feels like a failure. He's beating himself up for this, and he basically feels a loss of pride and that he had to rely on Renly to do what he should have done. And Alice is basically trying to reassure him, you didn't do anything wrong. You did what you were supposed to do, and it's not your fault. You know, Alice is really trying to perk up Eldry, trying to give him a pep talk there as his master, and Eldry is just basically saying, I'm not worthy of being called your apprentice, especially after what you have done. Eldry is just beating himself up for this. And while these two are continuing to talk, they're actually taken aback as the chief of the ogres comes narrowly marching through the smoke and the mist and the debris of battle, and Alice is demanding to know why he's here, especially with so many of his men died, and the ogre chief turns to Alice and says, I am here for you, Priestess of Light. If I can take you back to Emperor Vecta, the war will be over. And Alice is confused by this. She's like, well, what do you mean? She's basically demanding more information and for the ogre chief to elaborate here. And the ogre chief basically tells her, if I can deliver you to Emperor Vecta, the war will be over, and he will grant the wish of anybody that delivers the Priestess of Light to him. And it's at this point Alice realizes that the Emperor, the Dark Emperor, is only after her. That's the only reason he's attacking, basically, according to the Ogre Chief. And she's really confused by this as the Ogre Chief charges in on Alice. However, Alice is not going to have any part of this as she slices the Ogre Chief in half, even as Eldry promises to defend her. So yeah, Alice is having to save Eldry again and again. This is just kicking poor Eldry while he's down. But now Alice knows a little bit more about what the Dark Emperor Vecta wants. He wants her, and she realizes that she has to deliver this information to Broccoli immediately. So now we're going back to the Dark Territory, and we are actually going back to Emperor Vecta, aka Mr. Miller, and he's actually talking to Di. And Di is basically having to be on her knees begging Vecta for forgiveness and explaining why her plan failed. And when she does this and explains that there's not enough spatial resources to launch another wide-scale attack like that because they need sunlight, grassland, they need these kinds of things to create spatial resources, or they need death and blood to raise dark power to launch another attack like that. And Emperor Vecta is kind of kind of just kicking back. He's not really saying much. And then finally he turns to the orcs in his army, and he turns back to Di and says, well, would 3,000 lives be sufficient? And Di is kind of confused by this, but ultimately says, yes, 3,000 lives would be sufficient to launch another attack on our enemies here. So this is, again, another savage moment from Mr. Miller, aka Emperor Vecta, and just showing how ruthless he is and how willing he is to just sacrifice all these lives. He doesn't care. He is just focused on himself and his goal of Alice or Alicia. So yeah, Emperor Vecta gives Di an order. Go to the orcs, round up 3,000 of them, do what you have to do to launch another attack. It's an unsaid order because that happens off screen, but ultimately we then go back to Di, who has now approached the chief of the orcs, Liplin, and she's basically telling Liplin, gather 3,000 of your soldiers, and we are going to destroy them and use their spatial resources to attack our enemies in the human empire. And Liplin is furious at this. He's like, no, I'm not going to sacrifice 3,000 of my men. My men came here to fight. We came here to fight for glory. We are not just going to sacrifice ourselves for your failure, which he points out to Di, which infuriates her. And finally, Di just raises up and she says, now look, listen to me. This is an imperial order from Emperor Vecta. You are to line up 3,000 of your soldiers, and we are to destroy them to use their spatial resources to attack the human empire. And this is just infuriating Liplin even more, and we see his love actually come in, and she is basically the one to assure him that if this is for the Emperor demands this, the Emperor wishes this, we will gladly give our lives for the Emperor and his plan. So it's actually his love here that is basically reasoning with Liplin, like, yes, please let us walk into death because it's for the Emperor. So Liplin begrudgingly agrees to do this, and he's actually there to watch his men being sacrificed later on in the episode, which we'll talk about. But again, just a powerful moment there from Liplin, and a strong introduction to his character. I mean, I know he's a bad guy here, and a minor bad guy character is one of the Council of 10 here, but it's just neat to see his character already unfold in such a way, in my opinion. So as Liplin's soldiers are gathering up to carry out Di's plan, we go back to Alice, who is meeting with Broccoli and Fanadio, and we actually see the Human Guardian army here for a little bit, kind of licking their wounds, if you will, eating, healing, doing what they need to do to kind of recover from this battle. And when Alice is meeting with Broccoli, Broccoli's actually eating with Fanadio by his side, and Alice basically explains the plan here. Alice wants permission to go by herself into the Dark Territory because she feels that if she goes on ahead as Emperor Vecta's only desire, really, he has to commit a large amount of his forces to go after her, and that will allow the Human Guardian army and the remaining Integrity Knights to wipe out the Dark Territory army. And Broccoli is kind of reluctant about this. He basically says, okay, assume you are the objective. What makes you think that this is going to work and that they don't have any further desire? And Alice, of course, doesn't have an answer to that. So Broccoli comes up with an additional plan to Alice's. He permits Alice to go ahead and go on as a decoy, but she is going to take a third of the Human Guardian Army's ground forces along with her in a raid style. And she is not going to be the only Integrity Knight going, as Broccoli insists that he is going to join the raid as well. So yeah, it's kind of foreseen that Broccoli would do that because he wants to be part of the action, and of course Alice is his favorite apprentice there, so it only makes sense that Broccoli is going to go ahead into this battle with Alice. However, what Alice doesn't tell Broccoli, and I find this interesting here, is as this is going on, Alice has a side objective. She realizes that if she gets to the Dark Territory, she can head to the World's End altar, because she remembers at the end of Season 1, when Kirito was turned into a vegetable, she remembers hearing somebody telling Kirito to take her to the World's End altar, and she's hoping that if she goes there herself, she can find answers and ultimately a way to heal Kirito. So again, a side objective for Alice there, on top of getting the bulk of the Dark Territory army off of the Human Guardian army. So again, very interesting that Alice wouldn't even tell Broccoli about this, her side objective into going into the Dark Territory. However, With that said, though, Alice's raid is put into motion, Alice's plan is put into motion, and Alice's raid will consist of 1/3 of the Human Guardian Army's ground forces, including its supply corps, which includes Tis, Rioni, and Kirito, respectively, and 4 Integrity Knights, Alice, Bercoli, Shasta, and Renly. Eldry will stay back with Fanadio and Disolbert as this Guardian Army force heads into the Dark Territory as a decoy. So yeah, and basically Eldry, Fanadio, and Disolbert's mission when those guys leave is to wipe out whatever forces are left that doesn't follow this raid. And Eldry is kind of reluctant to watch Alice go, and we even see Alice kind of looking back at Eldry as this force leaves, but ultimately Bercoli and Alice give the order to take off for the raid party. As they head into the Dark Territory, though, they are unaware of DI's plan, her curse, and we actually see this come to fruition as the orcs line up in this big circle here as instructed by the Dark Mages, and the Dark Mages begin to take away their life energy to unleash this curse of DIs, and they actually start pulling the orcs apart, and it's just gruesome and brutal, and it's really sad watching all these orcs just being killed for no reason. They're being sacrificed for this attack that ultimately doesn't work, and it's just really sad here. And we even see Liplin, who's overlooking this whole thing, and he's just bringing himself to tears. He can't watch. He's sick to his stomach just watching all of these soldiers, including his love, be broken and absorbed into this attack. And DI ultimately sees Alice's raid and launches her curse at this raid party. She's going to destroy it, and Alice and Bercoli see this coming, and they're like, well, wait a minute, this is impossible. They couldn't have gathered that much spatial resources, and this dark worm is rapidly approaching them. And so Bercoli orders all of them to fly up, and as they're flying up and getting out of the way of this attack, it just keeps coming. It keeps following Alice and the other Integrity Knights, and they realize that this isn't going to work. And that's when Eldry arrives, and he's flying full speed at the ground forces. He's going right in between the wagons, and he's heading straight up into the air, and he's using his perfect weapon control art on his whip to basically lure this massive serpent into attacking him and to follow him. And so he's basically luring this attack away and heading straight up and up and up with this curse of DIs in hot pursuit of him. And Eldry is consumed by this attack. He's destroyed not just once, but twice, because Eldry is killed the first time by this attack as it consumes him, but Eldry refuses to die until he achieves his objective, which is to rescue his mentor and his comrades, and we actually see his life counter click into the negatives by massive amounts. It ultimately gets into the 6-digit figure before ultimately the attack is completely absorbed. Eldry's taken the entire attack, and he's falling from the sky. Again, another touching sacrifice here from Eldry. And as he's falling, Alice is just taken aback by this. She's upset. She's flying straight towards Eldry in disbelief that this is happening and that he did this. And she actually catches the remains of Eldry and basically tells him, no, you are not going to die. And these two have one final touching moment together as mentor and apprentice, and Eldry eventually dies in Alice's arms. Again, another sad moment there, and Alice is just crying her eyes out. She can't believe that Eldry did that and that Eldry is gone, and she vows to avenge Eldry. And it's at this point she turns to her dragon and Eldry's dragon and orders them to charge straight on at DIs and her dark mages. She vows that they are not going to get away with this, and she actually orders the dragons to burn the dark mages that are there, and she even goes after DI with her sword, and DI is just like, I can't die here, I won't die here, I will be the Empress of Darkness. And she actually throws a couple of her mages in front of her to take the hit from Alice so that she doesn't die, a cowardly thing to do. But again, DIs is basically the Dark Territory equivalent of Queenella. That's what she wants to be. And according to Bercoli, her power rivals that of the Pontifex Queenella. So it's not surprising that this evil mage would do this. And her soldiers are actually crying as most of them are burning to death, either at the hands of the dragon or by Alice. And Alice is not going to be satisfied until these people that killed Eldry are gone. And that's where the episode leaves off, with DI's Dark Mages left in flames and Alice still seeking revenge and out for blood. So yeah, like I said, this episode was a very dark episode. It was a very heavy episode, and it really ran the gambit of feels, in my opinion. I went from feeling happiness when Eldry and Alice reunited, to sadness for Eldry, to sadness for the orcs, to ultimately anger over DI, and then back to sadness again as Eldry died, and then again kind of a little bit of gratification when Alice went after them for revenging and avenging her fallen protege. You know, it just really ran the gambit of emotion for me. Overall, though, I really enjoyed the episode. It did a lot of things right and not really a whole lot to complain about. It was a solid episode and a good rendition from the light novel, in my opinion, of Eldry's death. Overall, though, I give this episode a 9 out of 10. It was a strong episode. It was well animated. It hit the feels just right. Overall, not really a whole lot to complain about on this episode, in my opinion. But as always, in the comments section down below, let me know what your guys' thoughts were about this week's episode. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was just there? What were your thoughts? Just let me know in the comments section down below, because as always, I enjoy hearing from you. Alright everyone, as always, Templar74 signing off. Have a great day everybody, and I'll talk to you all next time. Goodbye everybody.